Boy, what's my story? It's interesting. I think about it practically every day, and I'm not kidding. I get up every day and pinch myself about the life I've led because I'm anything but what I'm supposed to be, and what I'm supposed to be wouldn't put me here. So I think about my childhood in particular, and I had a childhood that was something out of a Dickens novel, only it was the worst Dickens novel. I mean, I grew up without my dad. My father was alcoholic. My mom was an abusive alcoholic. So I grew up around this environment where love and intimacy and hugging, that wasn't something that was prevalent in my childhood. So it's interesting, now when I think about who I am today, I've never had a drop of alcohol, which people find amazing considering my personality. And it also doesn't give me any convenient excuses for my behavior or things I say, because people know I mean it, because I've never had I had too much to drink episode. But I grew up afraid of it. It's funny, I listen to people tell their stories about how they got where they were. And there are all these lessons that they learned along the way. And me, I didn't have any other than the ones of what not to do. I was petrified of being my mother or my father. So I didn't do the things they didn't do. My mother didn't work, my dad didn't work, or he was always unemployed, lost his job for one reason or another, probably drinking. But it was always interesting to me growing up in that environment. And I was the oldest of five. I had 3 brothers and a sister. All I could think about was getting out of that environment. That's all I could think about. And my mother used to take her anger and frustration out on me, and she would beat me endlessly. And I really developed kind of this almost an immunity to her, because I always felt like if I didn't let her see her hurt me, then she'd stop. And it worked. I would just sit there and let her beat me with a switch or a belt or extension cord or whatever, and I never let her see me cry. And in my mind, I kept thinking to myself, I'm never going to be my mother. It was almost like a coating, like a shield. So I really couldn't feel things. It was almost like a catatonic state when I think back. Of course, you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. You don't think like that. You're trying to find these defense mechanisms. But I learned at an early age how to be a liar too, which was something that I'm not proud of. But we didn't have gifts. We didn't have great Christmases. We didn't have anything. And so you go to school, and when you go to school, you're under this peer pressure, right? So you come up with lies on what you got for Christmas that nobody can see or prove. So you might say things like, well, we all pitched in and got a new TV or a new stove or something like that. And you become so acclimated at lying to protect the truth that you don't even realize that you become this kind of serial liar. And now I say all that because even as I got older, I learned to turn a lie into not telling the truth or not saying certain things about things that would hurt me or revealing myself. And it really wasn't until, and I didn't recognize it until I actually went to see a psychiatrist, because I was having relationship issues, and I was a perfect face. I mean, I still feel to this day that I was robbed of an Oscar, because I deserve an Oscar. I deserved an Oscar every year for putting on this functional face of being a functional person. And I recognized I wasn't. I met a guy, Greg Borgenson, and I met him at a time in my life where when he introduced himself, and it was at a social event, and he said he was a psychiatrist. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want anything to do with this guy. And long story short, I decided to give him a call. And I called him up one day and I said, can I see you? And I don't know what inspired me to do it. Maybe, I don't know. I don't try to insert God into every place in our lives, because I don't believe that's true. But something instinctively had me reach out to him. And Greg Borgenson probably saved, or probably is more responsible for the successes, the functionality that I've had as an adult in any one single individual in my life. It was amazing to me that when I sat down with him, the first thing I did was not say much of anything. And then he left the room. Never forgot this. He literally left the room. I go out and I look to see where he went because it was like 10, 15 minutes. So I look, and finally I see him down the hallway. He comes out. I go out and I say, "What's wrong?" He said, "Well, you seem pretty comfortable talking to yourself, so I just thought I'd leave you alone." I just started laughing. And he said, "When you're ready to talk to me, let me know." It changed my whole life. And he said to me, "I'm going to meet some of the people that you talk about in the grocery store. They won't know me and I won't know them. The only person I care about, the only vested interest I have is you and your well-being." I started seeing him every week from that point forward until we became such great friends, it didn't make any sense to do it. But I can tell you that reaching out at that moment, I felt like change. It was a pivotal point in my life because I felt like if I didn't get that out of me, if I wasn't able to say, "Hey, I'm scared inside. I'm starting to feel this vulnerability, this weakness, I'm having these frayed relationships," I probably might have been my mother or my father. I had all this pent-up stuff inside of me growing up the way I did, and he helped me release that. And I could sit in his office and just complain and bitch and cry, which is something going all the way back to my earlier story. I never did. I would never let him see me cry. My sister never got out of that, and I think it might have been my sister's murder. My sister was murdered when she was 18. I carried a lot of guilt that I wasn't able to rescue her because she was the baby of our family, and she got turned on to drugs and prostitution and wound up getting murdered in Flint. And I was at college at the time, and I always thought I was going to save him, and I never did. But Greg helped me find a way to save my sister. Not physically, but I've been an advocate for the shelter house, Underground Railroad, the YWCA. People think my contributions back to this community is like volunteerism. Nothing to do with volunteerism. It's my sister. Like, that's who I am. And so when I work at the shelter house, I see my sister. I become more a protector than anything. And so when I see vulnerability, especially in young women, I hear this cry, this plea. And it's the way I've calmed my own soul, to tell you the truth. It really has. Not being able to save your own sister, but being able to maybe save everybody else's sister, I think has been kind of I hope that becomes a cornerstone of my life, not the successes, the business, I just hope that somewhere out there, somebody could say, "Hey, thanks, for saving my sister or my mom," or somebody like that. But it all started with recognizing who I was and what was empty inside of me, or more importantly, what was bad inside of me, so it didn't manifest itself through my mother or my father. And I have 6 kids now, and the proudest thing in my life is that I'm so far removed from that, and my kids think this way I grew up was something like a figment of my imagination. And on my last day on this earth, that's the smile that'll be on my face, that I left this place better than I found it. I broke a cycle. My kids will never experience that. They've never seen a drunken dad or a father unemployed or anything of the sort. And I think when you address mental illness, it doesn't look like what people think it looks like. It's a thing inside of you, that thing that's a restlessness, a thing that you just know is there. And you got to answer it. It's like a little knock on the window of your soul. And I think when you come out from behind that window and open that door, I think it's amazing how liberating it feels. And then you really become who you are. And so that's who I am. That's the story of my life.